kick us off, let's talk about a little bit about the real life Gunner Girls. So had you guys known about this before you read the book?
I knew nothing about the Gunner Girls.
I haven't.
Oh my gosh.
This is Anne, and this is Molly, and I'm Kate, and we all work at Simon & Schuster in the Gallery Books group.
Yes.
I forgot that you guys don't know them, so my apologies. But Anne, did you know about the Gunner Girls?
No, Kate. I did not. The story was totally unfamiliar to me. I don't know if it's just something that's not taught as much in American schools. Mm-hmm. Obviously, I knew about Rosie the Riveters, and that was a story I was so gravitated to when I was studying world history or American history and World War II. But I'd never heard of these important women, and I did a bunch of Googling about ATS. And Molly, I know you were inspired to too.
I did, and it was really interesting to me because here we are, World War II, and women just like in the U.S. are being called in the U.K. to step up and to fight for their country. And what I also found really interesting in my Googling was that come 1941, which I think takes place just at where the book takes place, women between ages 20 and 30 were actually mandated to work for the ATS, which was a auxiliary part of the army to help participate. And a small division was the Gunner Girls. And their role was so important, but so little is known about them. And it was really, really fun to dive into this part of the war that I hadn't known very much about.
Yeah, I feel like we know quite a bit about the war through historical fiction, which is such an interesting, booming category of fiction these days. And I do want to talk more about that. But before we do, Julia Kelly herself, I believe, is in the comments. And so she is going to chime in on your comments and questions, and we would love to hear from you. And Julia actually she found out about the Gunner Girls because of a personal connection to World War II. And I believe you were telling me what it was earlier.
So, Julia, correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but I heard that the author's grandfather was a map printer, and he actually, according to her family history, printed one of the storming maps for D-Day during World War II. And it was so top secret, important national information that he slept by the printer so that no one would intercept it, which I found to be so remarkable. And there are just so many small but huge jobs that all went into the behind the scenes of a country at war. Similar to I was so drawn by Louise's cousin Kate, who is in ATS but not chosen to be a Gunner Girl, and she works as a telephone receiver during wartime calls, and I thought that all the different roles were so cool and interesting.
Yeah, people really had to come together, and it did seem like in England especially there was a huge war effort of civilians who were training and going outside of their homes, and even things like Louise, our main character, while she's in Cornwall, feels so hemmed in by not being able to help. Everyone, even no matter their capacity, no matter their education level, really wanted to be a part of the war effort. And even her mother, who is kind of an antagonist in the book, had a victory garden and was making food for the war effort because so much was going toward soldiers in the normal supply chain. So I would love to talk a little bit about what takes Louise outside of her previous experience and into kind of the larger world in the form of the love story. So before we do that, and I do want to hear your thoughts, I am going to remind you about the giveaway. If you write a question in the comments section below the screen, you will be entered to win a copy of The Light Over London in paperback, as well as a copy of the upcoming Book Club Favorites book. So please join us. But we were talking about the love story. So what did you guys think of the love story? Did you buy it? Did you fall in love?
Well, trying not to give away any spoilers, I was much more drawn to the modern day love story, just because I thought it was so unique that both characters really connected over the history of the diary. The love story.
And the love interest in the contemporary story is the neighbor.
It's the neighbor, and he's also a professor of medieval literature. I forget his name off the top.
Liam.
Of course, how would you forget?
Our old friend Liam. So I was really drawn to that, but for me the love story in Louise's story was really between her and the Gunner Girls, and I wanted to hear as much as possible between those characters interacting.
There was quite a big twist with the love story. I don't want to give it away, but I was truly shocked. Didn't see it coming at all. So congratulations, Julia, on writing
Truly.
something that can shock someone who reads for a living.
Yes, my jaw dropped open.
Yes.
But yeah, I thought that Louise's love story with Paul, who's a pilot, he sweeps her off her feet at a
He's
dance.
very charismatic.
Very charismatic. Who's the actor that they?
I want to say
Clark
Gene
Gable?
Kelly.
Clark
Yeah,
Gable.
Clark Gable.
Yes,
Yeah.
which is obviously any girl's dream.
Any girl of the time at
Any girl of the
least.
time's dream. And Louise is shy and a little nervous at first. She goes to this dance with her cousin Kate, who's super glamorous, and everyone's falling after her. But then for Louise to have this very charismatic and dashing pilot come after her is really exciting. But then the book gets even more exciting, I thought, when she does eventually decide, you know what, I'm going to join the war effort. I don't want to be in my small town anymore. And like what you said so beautifully, she does fall in love with the Gunner Girls. And while she's training and making these beautiful friendships with these women she's fighting with, she and Paul are writing letters to each other. So it's very, very romantic. But then, of course, we get a big twist. So you have to, if you haven't read the book yet, do read it because it's a hot one.
It's worth reading.
Yes.
And we're going to go to a question from the audience that I believe I have on my phone. Elizabeth wants to know if there was a real diary. So that seems like a question for Julia. Perhaps Julia can answer that in the comments. I do not know if there was a real diary, although people did keep a lot of diaries then.
If there was, I want my hands on
Yes,
that.
I know.
A real page turner.
Yes.
And let's see. Hal asks, what would you do if you found a diary like Kara did? Well, first I'd read it. 100%.
Yes.
Oh,
If it's an old diary, you have to crack it open and see
If it's a new diary and it's
I would still
I'm
read it.
reading it.
Yeah, I would definitely still read it. Yeah, 100%. I often go snooping through people's houses. Not for their diaries, but just to snoop. But I think that's kind of what makes life interesting.
Lock your office cabinet, Molly.
Yeah, definitely lock up.
I know.
So let's talk a little bit about how the contemporary storyline and the historical storyline intersect. Were you guys equally as enthralled by both of the timelines?
You know, I'm usually a sucker for the story going back, but as the book went on, I was more and more drawn to Kara and like seeing her come out of her shell more and kind of explore the story. And I want Iris, her grandmother, is living her best life in this book. She enters with a cocktail in hand, and I don't think she puts it down for the entire book. And I loved that. So the relationship between her and her grandmother really also made it equally as exciting.
Special for you.
Yeah. There's a lot of parallels between them. I am also a sucker for historical, and I personally was more drawn to Louise's story. But I loved seeing both of them grow in different ways throughout the book. I felt you see Louise kind of come into her own from this sort of sheltered life into learning that she is very strong and she can be very independent and make her own choices. And she grows so much throughout the book, and at the same time, Kara's growing as well. She's just come out of a really sticky divorce. She's moved out of London and is turning her, kind of starting over again. But we see her kind of getting her feet back on the ground too. And even though they're separate storylines, I felt like they were both having a discussion as the book was going on.
Right, and part of the modern day woman Kara's interest in the diary is that it was a connection to her grandmother, who she was so close to in this time in her grandmother's life that she would never talk about. And so it really was for her uncovering a mystery that felt really personal.
Yeah.
And so it felt exciting.
I was really torn between both. I think that they both kept the pages turning because you kind of wanted to know what was going to happen in the front story and in the back story. And to me, that's the most important thing because I do love dual timeline stories. But sometimes you find that one is kind of boring. Like often I fear that the contemporary story is a little bit boring. But I felt like in this one, they were both keeping the pages turning. They both had kind of mysteries at their heart about what was going to happen. And so I'd like to really quickly remind you about the giveaway that's going on. If you comment with a question below in the comment box, you'll be entered to win a copy of The Light Over London by Julia Kelly, as well as the upcoming book club favorites pick for next month. And we are going to reveal what that is at the very end of this live feed. So let's talk a little bit about just kind of your favorite parts. What did you guys like about the book?
I liked the twist at the end.
I know, you can't talk about it.
But I can't talk about about it.
Yeah, I did too. That was my favorite part, but we can't talk about it again. What about you, Anne?
What did oh gosh. I was very captivated by the twist, but I think it really was just all the Gunner girls interacting. I would have read a book about every single one of them.
Yeah, they were all very unique characters.
Yes, and I felt like Julia did a really great job of sprinkling like small little instances of the different things the country was doing for the wartime effort throughout the book. So I really enjoyed feeling like I was a part of that time with her mom's victory garden and with the rations happening and people getting a little fussy about it.
I love the grooming stuff, like the dresses and the clothes and the makeup and the shoes and the nylons. Like that's, to me, historical fiction is so great with those details about like it's just so different from now where you kind of throw on a pair of jeans and can run to the store and not get your hair curled and set and all fancied up. And we have an audience question. Sylvia wants to know if this would be a good IRL book discussion novel. Personally, I think it would be great in real life because there are a lot of different characters and a lot of different things for people to discuss. What would you do? Is it the same as what the characters did? Would you differ? What do you think? Are you?
Oh, definitely. I think this is like a great book club pick. There's so much to talk about, whether it's just the historical component. Luckily, a lot of people who still fought in the Second World War are still alive. So people have family connections, talking about the role of women in World War II versus now, and kind of the progress they were making even back in the 1940s, or even just a love story. A lot of our family members, I think, have secret hidden pasts that perhaps we don't know about. So after reading, you may be inspired to dig through your own grandmother's closet to see what you can find.
And I think, too, that the how little has changed. In a lot of ways, a lot of things have changed for women, but in some very core ways, both women in both time periods long for fulfillment and for love and for intellectual engagement in what they're doing, and for knowing that they're on the right path and contributing to something bigger than themselves. And I think that doesn't change no matter what time you're in. So I think there is, especially for book clubs with people who, with women, with people who have had military service, with people who have some experience in London or who have always wanted to go, there is such a sense of history and place in the book. And Cornwall as well. I felt like I learned a little bit about Cornwall.
Yeah, I agree. And to your point about the sense of place that is created, I just think that it would make for a wonderful little book club, and then maybe assign a little bit of homework and have someone do a little research on London in World War II.
So our next question is actually about the homework. Kelly would like to know, what do we suggest serving or doing to contribute to the thematic engagement with the book at a book club? I would say getting like a record player and playing some big band music would be kind of fun.
Great.
Or everyone should bring their favorite tea. Tea and biscuits.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Biscuit swap.
Yeah, that's a really good idea.
Yeah.
Or scones. Those are very British, right?
Exactly.
Get some clotted cream.
And definitely do a little cocktail for the grandmother.
Oh, yes.
Of course.
Yes. You could do kind of a fun old-fashioned bee's knees or something like that.
And I bet, too, you can even find, like, victory recipes if you wanted to get really fancy for, like, jams or even drinks about the rations that people had to use and working with what they had to make something tasty.
Right, you could make an entire spread with no sugar.
Exactly.
No butter.
Yeah.
Just like the war. Let's see if there's another audience question here. Kimberly asked, what is your favorite historical fiction novel? Oh my gosh, of all time. I don't know. A very different category. I don't know. Of all time is a tall order, but I would say the best one I've read recently, I'll give a shout out to Julia Kelly's next book because it's extraordinary. It's called The Whispers of War, and it is about 3 female friends who, in the lead up to World War II in London, have to ask themselves what they are willing to do for each other and what the real meaning of family is. And I think that is something that has a lot of resonance today. There's a lot of kind of what it means to be a good citizen and what it means to be a good friend and how those two things might conflict with each other. So I think that there is really something there. A book I didn't work on that I loved was Circe by Madeline Miller, which came out last summer.
Yes.
two summers ago, which I absolutely loved and read recently, and just can't say enough good things about. What about you guys?
My favorite, I think my favorite historical is To Kill a Mockingbird, but that's everybody's favorite historical. But The Book Thief is still one of those books that, for me, every time I read it, I cry. I find that it's still one of the most beautiful pieces of writing I've ever read, and if you're not familiar with it, you look through kind of the eyes of death, and how he touches these different people's lives.
And it's World War II as well.
And that's World War II as well, taking place in Germany.
More YA, I think?
It's more YA, but it's still very near and dear. Yeah.
What about you, Anne?
Well, I'm actually pretty new to historical fiction, and I was gonna come into this saying that this was my first historical fiction, but now, no, it's a lie, because after hearing, I was like, oh, I've read Madeline Miller, loved Song of Achilles, read it for the first time this year, and loved The Book Thief, so apparently I've just been an old hat at it.
Right, you just didn't realize.
Yes.
Yeah, welcome to the fold. There's plenty of historical fiction to go around.
Yes.
Do we have another audience question? Let's see. Lori asks, what other books has Julia written? Julia has written a series of historical romance novels that are they in here? I'm not going to be able to come up with all the names off the top of my head, but she's a tremendous writer, and she has done, I want to say, three before she did Light Over London, possibly more. 3 to 6. Oh, I'm really embarrassing myself now. In my defense, I wasn't her editor on those books. But I hear that they're really, really beautiful, and I've always heard great things about her writing. And they are a little more romantic themed than this one, and I believe they are Regency romances, if that is correct. And so they're set in a different time period, but equally as well researched and as heartfelt. So we're really proud of Julia.
Yes.
And I want to remind you all again about doing a question in the box, because we are doing a giveaway for the Light Over London and also for the next book club favorites pick. And again, this is book club favorites live from Simon & Schuster. I'm Kate, this is Molly, and this is Anne. And this month we are talking about The Light Over London by Julia Kelly, which is out in paperback last week. So it is available now everywhere books are sold, and we would love to welcome you to our book club discussion about it. Let's check for our audience questions and see if there are more. Rita wants to know if it's hard to if the book is hard to follow if you don't have any prior military experience. Certainly not. I know I have never served in the armed forces, but even if you have not, even if you have no working knowledge, Julia does a wonderful job of explaining to you how it actually worked. And because the characters are largely civilians entering into this war effort, you don't have to be steeped in the world to know about how this all kind of structures itself for lay people. And a lot of people are tuning in and asking, is this based on true events? So the Gunner Girls are a real ATF division. ATS, Auxiliary Division of the British Armed Forces during World War II. And they really existed. They really did lift the war efforts on their backs. They did everything but shoot the guns at German bombers that were flying over London during the Blitz. And they were real. And then I don't believe that our main characters are based on like one real person. I believe they are inspired broadly by a lot of people who served in the war effort. But yes, all the historical facts are true and based on reality. So we are going to, I think, talk a little bit about what inspired you guys to pick this book up. What appealed to you about it?
Well, first of all, the cover is absolutely
It's really
beautiful.
beautiful.
And as soon as I saw it, I love a World War II historical novel. Historical novels are my bread and butter, so I knew I had to pick it up. But I think what really drew me to this is that it's a women's story. This is a story of two women, one living in the 1940s, one living in present day. And I think both of them are trying to kind of find their sense of place in the world, to really find themselves on their own, outside of their family, outside of their friends, and to really grow as people. And even though one of those perspectives is historical and set many years ago, the themes and the things that these women both go through are universal. And that's what I love about historical, I think, is that it connects you to time periods and reminds you that kind of if you're living today or if you were living in the 1940s or earlier, there's something that connects all of us. And I think that that's a really cool thing.
Yeah, I agree. What about you, and what drew you to this book?
Well, what drew me really is when, I think I mentioned before, when I was in school, I was so fascinated with Rosie the Riveter, and that's such an American sort of character and story, not story, but, you know, real life person. Yeah, thank you. And so I really wanted to see it from a Londoner perspective, and Julia Kelly does such a great job of painting the way the war affected the entire city, and so it was really great to dive into that and sort of see this new perspective that I was unfamiliar to.